So in another video, I made a review of this game, of this book, with one game from chapter 1. However, this is a repertoire book, so you learn from against a lot of different openings that Black can throw at you. So what I like of Moskalenko is that when he starts a chapter, that you can see here, sorry, when you start a chapter, it gives you a little history of the opening, and then it also goes to tell you about the plans, a bit of history. Then there are the plans that you have as white, so you know, and also as black, the typical plans that you have in this opening. Okay, so this is the great of this book. It's a real repertoire book, worth of learning from. And now I would like to show you a game from chapter 2. As I mentioned before, I love Moskalenko's books because it doesn't show you a repertoire that he didn't play. He shows you a repertoire that he actually played. Here there are many games played by him. I will show you game 12 for chapter 2, that is against the modern Benoni. Okay? So this was Viktor Moskalenko against V.K. Makarevich in Yerevan 1988. So he did play this repertoire. Okay? D4, knight f6, c4, c5, d5, e6, knight c3, e takes d5, c takes d5, d6, this is the Benoni, e4, g6, f4, bishop g7. And now there is a Moskalenko move that is very good for him. He says bishop b5, check, knight f d7. And why is good? Because here is the plan in reality that White had. He wanted probably to have this not protected, this going back, because now he plays bishop e2. Very interesting, right? Castle, knight f3, knight a6, castle, knight c7, bishop d2, and rook b8. And here there is a comment that says, with this move, Black is trying to save a tempo for executing his main plan with b7, b5. So his plan is this, an expansion on the queen side. 12, rook e8 is game 11 above. So in game 11, he showed a game against Artashis Minasian, also played in Yerevan in 1988, where Black played rook e8. Yeah, very interesting. Okay, what do you do here as white? Since you know that the plan by Black is to play this, probably you want to fight back, right? How do you fight? a4. Okay, now it's Black turn, and Black plays a6, because obviously it's really hell-bent on doing this, b5. But again, you're white. How do you prevent that? a5. And here Moskalenko says this is a well-known blockade, is very useful since it reduces Black's possibility of counterplay with advance b7, b5. And here there are some analysis, because it shows you that you can play also differently. You could play another move instead of a5. Now, why is this important? Well, let me tell you, because sometimes you play against the same players at the same club, so you want to have sometimes in tournament a surprise to avoid that you fall into their opening preparation, okay? So here Moskalenko shows us practically more than half of the next page, all in weapons and tricks and analysis diagrams. So that's kind of very important. Okay, so after playing 14 a5, black played b5. Of course, now there is the en passant. A takes b6, knight takes b6, and what would you play as white? This is a move that I believe it's difficult to find. I also think this move is one of the moves that we play in a stonewall Dutch for white. It's a kind of move you would play in a stonewall Dutch for white because the bishop makes that kind of maneuver. So sometimes you need to know more than one opening to understand what's going on. The move is bishop e1. You say, wow, why? Because the idea is to go here. So also in the stonewall Dutch you have this, this, this. In the stonewall Dutch for black you have this, this, and then going here, okay? So from other opening you can learn typical pieces maneuver, right? So that's why it's important. Knight d7 is a dubious move. Confusion at the key moment. It was necessary to look for counterplay immediately. It seems so this is not the right one. And here Moskalenko analyzed bishop b7, which still leave the initiative to white, but on knight b5 was very interesting, and he also analyzed f5, okay? So there are different analyses that give you different perspective for black. However, the best probably is this knight b5, it seems. Okay? So instead he played knight d7, before I forget. Bishop h4, good move. Rook e8, queen e8, and here queen c2. Moskalenko says queen d2 was better. So we also have analysis of this little move. Now black plays knight b5, but it seems it's not a good move, okay? And also in this case, Moskalenko gives 2 lines for black. Bishop takes b5, a takes b5, and once more, here you have a diagram. Because you see, Moskalenko is trying to teach you something, to give you a message that goes beyond the word. He's trying to teach you something that you will be able to play over the board. When you will be over the board, you will remember this pawn break. And the right move here is e5. The typical e4, e5 break is white's primary goal in the middle game. His initiative in the center is more important than activity on the flanks. However, he says also rook f e1 is a solid preparatory move. Okay? But he played e5. He takes e5, and probably better was knight b6 instead of d takes e5, rook f e1, but we could have played this, threatening this, so rook f e1, f6, and now there is knight e4 with the initiative, okay? This is a typical sign from the informant that Spearline, this idea that with symbols we are able to save space on paper, and they are a kind of little more universal. Now black played a mistake. He played queen d8, not good. There was a better move that was queen f7, also if it doesn't save the game, okay? But he played queen d8, and Moskalenko says the decisive error. So what would you play now as white? Quite simple. F takes e5, g5. Now, pause the video, try to find what you would play as white. White played knight e takes g5, great move. F takes g5, knight takes g5, and queen takes g5. Bishop takes g5, knight takes e5, rook a7, bishop f5, and finally the last move of the game. Can you guess which one it is? Yes, rook takes g7 check, and the game is over. Black resigns. Okay, beautiful game. How would you continue here? How would you play against black when he takes the rook? Very good question. I do think you have to play this also against an engine because it will give you a lot. But in general, probably queen takes c5. Remember that the king is attacked. Okay, so that's kind of important. Okay, beautiful game, and I'm moving on to another chapter, the snake Benoni. I think it's kind of interesting because it teaches us where the pieces go and when you actually have to break through. Okay,